Okay, hello everyone. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as my YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. Today is Wednesday, which is February the 8th. And so in this podcast, I go over topics in regards to the paranormal, occult, and supernatural. And I'm going to briefly go into the topic for today. I'd like to start off by saying that this podcast, as well as this YouTube channel, is for entertainment purposes. So, today's topic is witchcraft or sorcery, I would say. I'm going to say sorcery. So what is witchcraft? It's the practice of magic, the use of spells and things of that sort. Now let's go to sorcery, because I think I'm going to entitle this sorcery. Sorcery. Sorcery is the use of magic, especially black magic. That's what it is. It's the use of power gained from the assistance or control of evil spirits, especially for divining necromancy. Now, as we know, for those who may be listening, tuning in, I'd like to state that this podcast is for entertainment purposes. It's not a biblical nor religious podcast, although I may bring up the biblical text. It's not a biblical nor religious podcast. So I consider myself to be a spiritualist. Okay? So in regards to sorcery, that's what we're going to talk about today. Sorcery. The practice of malevolent magic derived from casting lots as a means of divining the future in the ancient Mediterranean world is what it has here. So I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but it was said to have been done by way of witches with the intent of evil. But it goes on to mention that witchcraft can be either good or bad. And sorcery is a knowledge of the occult, with use of poisons. So when you begin to, because I am consider myself to be what? Spiritualist. Once you have began to go through things and you're able to study different behaviors as such, and you would get an inclination as to, well, why do these people do this versus do that? And God will make it apparent to you as to what is being conveyed, what is going on. And as I mentioned to someone, a couple of weeks ago, I said, those are spirits. Those are spirits. And I guess the person may have looked at me and said, okay, what the hell is she talking about? Those are spirits. When people begin to, get off into things such as paranormal or whatever the case may be, that it's spiritual more so than anything. And behind the scene, or the deep root issue of it all, is something is going on. I believe oftentimes it's an attack on the mind that manifests itself spiritually. Like something is going on, something is transpiring, is what it is. So according to this, and I'm going to read what this verse mentions. Like I said, I'm not a biblical person nor a religious person, but I oftentimes will bring up the biblical text. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, one who uses divination and soothsayer, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer. Deuteronomy 18:10. So basically, this is telling you, you need to stay in your place. We didn't ask you to come over here and diagnose nobody or tell somebody what to do. That's what we're here to do. So that lets you know that you are under the guidance or the influence of somebody that likes control. You catch my drift? Likes control and likes to be in control. And once the spiritual eyes has been opened, I'm going to tell you what that is. It ain't nothing that nobody has to say to you. I'm going to tell you what that is, because this may be something that you may not have considered. To the psychologists, the doctors, or whomever that is out there. This is what this is. I'm going to show you and tell you what this is. I don't have to go to doctor school to know that. I have studied people long enough, been around people long enough to know what that is. It's spiritual. And as I mentioned before, I said a lot of things are a state of mind. It's all based on perception and all based on it's something that these people are lacking. It's something that they're lacking and they're not saying it. So the spirit will present it as such for somebody to pay attention and tell them what it is. Oftentimes attention-seeking behavior is because of something that is within that they're not receiving or getting. Daniel 2:2, sorcerers, is the translation of the Hebrew Mekhashphim. I guess that's how you would say murderers, men who profess to have power with evil spirits. Okay, so by way of, I mentioned before, when you will begin to know when somebody chatter. Like, it's a difference between when somebody's talk and when somebody chatters. Like, if I come up to you and, we have a conversation or what have you, we're engaged. But chatter comes by way of the soul. Words cannot even explain. Like, you're just speaking and you're not even paying attention to what you're saying. It's just flowing out of you. That's chatter. That's by way of the soul. And oftentimes, God will have certain individuals, such as a sorcerer, quote unquote, who can hear it as such. I mentioned before, a couple of weeks ago that I had an experience where I was listening to some music, a song. I said this before. I was listening to a song, and make sure I'm still recording. Let me look on my podcast, make sure I'm still recording, because sometimes it will begin to go out. Anyways, I was listening to a song, and it was like, and I'm like, what in the world? And I was listening to a CD, so the CD, in the physical sense of it all, nothing was going on with the CD, but in the spiritual sense of it all, he was giving me inclination about what demon this person was dealing with in the making of this song. Like, this person was dealing with something at that time when he made this song. Like, it was being done under the guidance of a spirit. Like, you would know when somebody is doing something. God does give us free will, but he also, when you begin to, he will put you in such a mode that would be a message for someone, or even perhaps for that person as well. And I was able to gain that insight by way of this person. I was able to gain that insight as to what this person was dealing with. This person was speaking backward. It was a male that was singing the song, a young male that was singing the song, but somehow it was backward. And that goes to show you how a lot of times people begin to take things in and they're not paying attention to what is being said and what is being conveyed. Okay? So that's basically what the gist of that was. In terms of that. I think a sorcerer, a spiritualist, which I would consider myself. I don't consider myself to be a sorceress or a sorcerer, but I do believe that I have that ability to tap into that power. And as I sit here, I do see, and this is off topic, I got my Egyptian Tarot, and I can actually scan this. So let me, while I'm thinking about this, I can actually scan it onto my phone if I have not already. Scan it onto my phone so I would have it. Okay. So next time I do my my tarot card, it will be there. Okay. So. Alright, so let's see. We're gonna, and bear with me just one moment because I need to get a lot of this off of here. It got all these different ones here. Oh, okay. It has a lot of them here. Okay. Alright, well, I will keep it on there then. Alright, so let's get back to what I was talking about. So, anyways, I'm going to pull up another verse. It says, then the king gave orders to call in the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came in and stood before the king. Now, I don't profess to know everything, but I do feel as though the king, the one who is above, was curious because he began to take note and say, you know what? Maybe these people are reporting me. Yeah, you'll begin to see that even as a pastor or someone that's doing public speaking and, you know, motivational speaking and things of that sort, and they constantly calling you to different venues and things of this sort to speak, you'll begin to realize that these spirits are telling on you. And you got to figure out a way of how to play it off. So it's a way to humble yourself and to convict yourself. It's a self-conviction thing. The unrepentance practice of sorcery brings severe punishment from God, is what it has mentioned here. According to who? So you got to realize a lot of, when you read this biblical text, these are spirits that are putting out a lot of this information. You're dealing with a whole bunch of different spirits. So it's all based on what you accept. It's all based on perception. Whatever you accept as your reality. A lot of people don't get that understanding. They don't grasp that. It's done by way of different spirits. Of course, they're going to say these things if they're not wanting you to put it on Front Street. If I'm a demon and I'm continuing to be a demon, do you think I'm going to sit here and tell you how to goddamn get rid of me? No. That's common sense. And they did not repent of their murderers, nor of their sorcery, nor of their sexual immorality, nor of their thefts, is what it mentions for Revelations 9:21. I'm just bringing up these biblical texts. I'm not a biblical person because the topic is about sorcery. So a lot of these things came up regarding that, okay? I'm not a pastor. I don't profess to be a pastor, nor I desire to do so. Okay, so we have Malachi 3:5 says, "Then I will draw near to you for judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers, and against the adulterers, and against those who swear falsely." So, again, you got to think about it. Who would say something like this? Who would have problems with things of the sort? Who will always give pushback about one thing versus the next? You got to think about it in that sense of the matter, because I'm going to explain to you. Although I indulged in the occult, I find oftentimes some of the most meanest spirited people are actually quote unquote Christians. And oftentimes you will find the demon is sitting right there in the church yard and in the church pew, and they get them all in the same spot because they begin to watch them and see who is of God and who is not. Now we got Revelation 22:15. Outside are the dogs and the sorcerers and the sexual immoral persons and the murderers and the idolaters and everyone who loves and practices lying. We got Revelation 21:8. Sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in a lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So we're going to go to a necromancer. What is a necromancer? Because this is something that I see oftentimes, when I begin to just so happen to bring in biblical texts when I'm doing my Spiritual Sense podcasting. So, necromancer, Deuteronomy 18:11, one who interrogates the dead, as the word literally means, with the view of discovering the secrets of futurity, is what it mentions here. So this will let you know that those who are curious to know what caused these things to happen to this particular person. So who would have problems with somebody? Who would have problems with somebody wanting to avenge the death of someone who has died? Who would have problems with that? The murderer. So that goes to show you that a lot of the terms and things that were written was done in such a way to deceive those demonic spirits, because a lot of those individuals were demonic. They was very demonic. They didn't care anything about anybody. Jealous hearted. And so this is why they get a lot of those individuals into a certain location to monitor them, to see what it is that they are capable of doing. God also mentioned to me, I oftentimes refer to spirit-related job field, spirit-related job field, spirit-related job field. That means a correlation of that spirit is paired in that job. That means, I heard, knock on wood, and this is not to offend anybody who is out there that may be into psychology, psychologists, psychiatrists, because, I had a passion at one point in time for the mental ill community. I worked in mental health is what I'm getting at. A couple of years of my healthcare career. But anyways, there was a term or saying that the psychologist is the one that's crazy, so to speak. So I use that loosely, not to be, facetious or, make light of the matter or whatever, but I use it on more in a different context. Oftentimes, you will begin to take note of what spirits gravitate to what spirit-related job field. Like if someone gravitates to healthcare, could it perhaps be that someone or this person or persons are in need of health care. So they may gravitate to crime, like criminal justice or something like that. Could it very well be that someone came against them, criminally, or somebody accused them of something and they need to avenge, the things that have been done to them? Could that very well be it? Or somebody that may gravitate to, nutrition, a job as a nutritionist, dietitian, or food service or whatever. It's because there is a need for food and nutrition and things of that sort. So that's why I began to take note of things as such. And that's why I consider myself a gypsy, because of seeing it in such a way, in such a matter. Okay? So I am going to conclude this episode of Spiritual Sense. Speaking on, I think I'm going to say sorcery. Speaking on sorcery and my interpretation of what sorcery is. And also, when you begin to read the biblical text, you will begin to see that these are essentially spirits that are coming up, similar to, as I was reading those different, and I'll give you an example, because this is how I'm able to interpret this, because he's beginning to put things into my psyche as I'm reading. That is how I'm able to relate one to the next. But I'm going to say that I only got a couple of minutes. It put me in the mind in reading those texts, biblical verses of the book that I read almost 30 years ago now. I'm Eve. Like multiple personality disorders, all these different spirits coming in and things of that sort. And you'll begin to see that you're tapping into the thoughts of others. However, they're not going to make that apparent to you. It works the same way when you begin to read this biblical text. You are tapping into the thoughts and the understanding and revelation as to what is being conveyed by way of that biblical text. Okay? So I am going to conclude this episode again. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you're more than welcome to comment in the comment section below. Until then, have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.